now. All right, so what we have been talking about is graphs. And so this was last week. We were looking at graphs. We were trying to figure out how they looked on the page. We were describing them. We were finding points that were important. We were talking about those. And a graph is one representation of a larger thing that we're going to be talking about. I'm actually going to use a different color for this one, which is called a function. So a function is something that is basically, I'll give you a definition in a minute, but a function can be represented with a graph, and that was what we did before. A function can also be represented, I'm going to try to be colorful here. It can also be represented with a table. A function can also be represented with a equation. And the last thing that we really could see a function being represented with would possibly be if we were going to talk about a situation or like a story problem. Now, in a regular year, if we had time, we would spend some time with this. But a lot of what we're going to do is we started with graphs. We'll do a little more. Today, we're going to talk about tables. Sometime this week, we're going to talk about equations. We probably won't get to this very much this year. But the other thing that we'll be able to do is we should be able to go in between these as well, where they can go back and forth as different representations of what a function is. So we have done a lot of this work this year already. We just haven't given it this name. So that's kind of what today is going to be about, is when I say this, what does it mean? And so I'm going to start by talking about that a little bit. So let's start. When we talk about a function, it is a relationship between two variables. And when I call this, the variables we're going to use are our input, which we call our x, and output, which we call our y. So we've done a lot of things with x and y. And so it's a relationship between these. And there is one rule that works for all of them if it is going to be a function. And it's every x has only one y. That's our rule. Or every input has only one output, depending on which words you want to use. For us, we mean x and y. Sometimes in math, they use the word input and output as we're talking about this. Now, the way that this works, it just means if it's going to be a function, we just have to look at the way that these are paired up, check to make sure that there aren't any x's that have more than one y. Let me tell you what I mean when I say that, because I think sometimes you say the rule and it's hard to understand what it is that we're talking about. It's kind of why I want to start with a table, because I think it's easier to see when we're talking about this from a table perspective. It's easier to see what we're talking about. So I'm going to write, when we talk about a table, what we're looking at. And so when we do a table, a lot of times what we'll have is we'll have x's and y's like this, where we can put them next to each other. And so I'll give you one that is a function. So this will be a function. And I'm going to give you one that is not a function. And see if you guys kind of understand what I'm talking about. So this will be the same two tables, and we'll look at this just to kind of see what we can do. Okay, so here's an example of one that is a function. We could start with 3, 2, 5, 4, 8, 15, -2, 6, 0, 9. All of these on this table, they're paired together. So I could make this a graph where I could have them as points, but it means 3 goes with 2, 5 goes with 4, 8 goes with 15, -2. So these work this way. It's a function because every x has exactly one y. 3 only goes to 2. 5 only goes to 4. 8 only goes to 15. If 3 went to more than one thing, if I had another 3, would not be a function. An example of not a function would be we could have some that were regular. We could have 1, 2, we could have 4, 5. But if I gave you another number that started with 1 and went to something else, that x goes to 2 different y's. This makes it not a function. So it wouldn't matter what else I had. Even if everything else was okay, so if I had 3, 7 and 2, 9, as long as you have one x that goes to more than one y, this is not a function. Okay? Now, I'm going to ask, does anybody have any question about this general rule before I move on and give you a couple more examples of this? Because I can write a pretty easy rule for it. I just want to see if you have questions about this yet. And I'll look at the chat just to see if anybody has anything. Or if Dr. Agarwal, if anybody asks you privately, let me know.
¿Preguntas alguien tiene?
So what you're really looking for, and I'll sort of make this on its own little rule here. If x repeats, it is probably not a function. There's one situation like this that I want to show you where it could be. But for the most part, if you follow this rule, if you look for an x repeating, not a function. If x doesn't repeat, it is a function. And you'd think that this would be more complicated than that. It's really not. If x repeats, it's probably not a function. Okay, so I want to do this. I'm going to give you a couple tables. And I want you guys, when I finish the tables, I want you to tell me, is this a function? Is this not a function? Okay, so let me do this really quickly. I'm just going to do a couple for a page here and we'll see sort of what happens. Let's do this. Here we go. I'm going to make this really quickly. -7, 3, 15. Oh, gosh darn it. Sorry about that. That was not our class. I had my volume up for my phone. That was actually a text. I apologize. I'm going to flip that over so that my phone doesn't make any more distractions. That kind of scared me for a minute there. 7, 2, 6, 3, 9, 14, 7, and 8, 3. Okay. Is this a function? And I'm going to say this. So we'll have this function. Yes. No. So you guys tell me, is this a function? Yes or no? Type this in here. Tell me what you think. Is this a function? Yes or no?
¿Esto es una función o no? Escriban en el chat.
Mm-hmm. If you're wrong, it's okay. We'll explain it. This is our first chance to guess. I want to see. Yes, yes.
Si cometen un error, el maestro les explica porque es la primera vez que estamos practicando. It is a function, Stephen.
Stephen says yes. Elil says yes. Juan says okay, which I'm going to say is yes. You guys are right. because we look at our x's, there are no repeats. -7, 15, 2, -3, 14, 8. No repeats means, yes, it is a function. We do have y values that repeat. That does not matter for it to be a function. It's okay for a y value to repeat. This is okay. 3 and 3 is okay, 7 and 7. The only thing that matters is the input, or the x. There's no repeats. Yes, it is a function. Okay? Does that make sense? I'm going to give you another one. I want to see what you think about this one. Okay. Good job, by the way. Thank you very much for participating. Okay. X and Y.
In Mr. Vector, whether
Yes.
positive or negative, it doesn't matter either.
Nope. As long as the number doesn't repeat itself, you're completely fine. 2, 7, 3, 9, 4, 16, -2, 8, 4, 12, 7, 15, and -6, 3. Okay. Is this a function? Yes or no? Is this a function? Yes or no? You got to make your guess again. Steven says no. Other guesses? Only one guess for this one?
¿Alguien más puede adivinar si es una función o no?
I'll give you guys a chance to make sure. Steven has said no. I want to be sure. Remember, we're looking at our x's. Do any of the x's repeat?
¿Se repite algún valor en la X?
One of them does. What number repeats?
¿Qué número se repite?
America is right. And I think, Steven, you were probably guessing the same. You were probably seeing the same thing. If we have a value that repeats, 4 repeats as x, so no function, because 4 goes to 16 and 4 goes to 12. Since 4 is paired with 2 different y's, remember, every x can only have one y. This one has 2, so it is not a function. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you something that I don't think is confusing, but I want to make sure. It is a different example that if you looked at it, you would say, it's weird. And it's okay. But there's one example to do this. This one is a very good example of not a function. Okay, here we go. I think this will be our last example for a minute, and then I have an activity for you guys to look at. You don't have to do it, but it is something you'll have to look at here. X and Y. All right, so we'll do this. Whew, that's awful. I'll make that a 2. 2, -3, 8, 5, 6, -7, 4, 12, 8, 5, 16, -3, and 0, 9. Okay. Is this a function? Yes or no? What do you think? Is this a function? Yes or no?
¿Es una función, sí o no?
Anyone? Somebody has to make a guess for us to be able to figure out the right way to go here. Is
Okay.
this a function?
¿Alguien puede decir si es una función o no? Ok, Juan, mire, la definición de función es que los valores en X no se pueden repetir. Entonces, si usted tiene números que se repiten en X, no es una función. Si tiene si tiene números que no se repiten, entonces sí es una función. Entonces, mire otra vez los números.
And I think so. What America, I think, is saying is that there are two of the same X. Is that right? Both of the eights. I want to show you something about the one trick. Because America, you are right. 8 repeats. What we have to look at is what does 8 go to? Here, 8 goes to 5. And if 8 goes to something else, then it's not a function. If it goes to the same thing, and this is silly, but this is a problem that math books everywhere will put a problem like this and say, is it a function? And they're trying to trick you. You still have to check. This is like repeating the same thing. So you could almost just cross this out and say, it's not even there. It's already here. I don't have to write it twice because it goes to the same thing. This is a function only because this number is the same.
Ok, esta es una función porque es el mismo 8-5, 8-5 repetido 2 veces.
Yes.
Si fuera 8-5 y 8-3, entonces no sería función. If you had 8-5 and 8-3, it's not a function.
No function. That's right.
Pero como tenemos 8-5 2 veces, entonces es el mismo número si es una función. Wow.
Yeah, I know. And I wouldn't show it to you if it wasn't going to maybe come up. So that's the place that you have to look for, okay? Now, I want to show you something. So, America, you did a good job. You found what I would say is the right thing. You always have to check that one thing. Are they tricking you? And here they were. That's what I wanted you to see, okay? Normally, if you see a repeated X, it is not a function. But you always got to check if they did this, okay? What I want to do for just a minute is show you a way. Now, this is not great. This is fine. It is an activity that somebody came up with on Desmos. I am not going to make you log in. I just want you to watch it, okay? This is an activity that somebody did on Desmos that is, it's fine to sort of have us look at and see, is this a function? Is this not a function? And so I'm going to get you to that in just a minute, but I want to make sure that I can find it first. Maybe I don't have it. That would be interesting too. I thought I had one.
Mr. Vector, see
yeah.
that Juan, he wrote that he believes it is a function.
And
It
Juan
would be
was
nice
right.
to know how he believes it is a function.
So Juan, was that why you believe? Talk about that, Juan. Why did you believe it was a function?
Entonces, Juan, usted escribió que cree que sí. ¿Nos puede explicar por qué usted cree que sí es una función? Because maybe he saw what you saw, Mr. Vector.
I know, and that's the thing. You never know how it's going to work. I'm like, well, let's see here.
So, Juan, ¿nos puede contestar? Oh, he's a little confused.
That's okay. That's totally okay. I'm trying to open up this activity just to see if we can maybe make this a little less confused. And maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. Let me see if I can get this. Okay. I'm going to try to do a new share here. It took me a minute to find this. I'm sorry about that, guys. Let me see if this is helpful to you. Okay. So what we're looking at right here is an activity where we're going to just say, I look at one and say, is it a function? Is it not a function? And then I set it on top of this category here. There's a few that are harder to see and I'll move them around, but I want you to look at this for a second and let's think. So let's just start with this one. So with this one right here, anytime we say input, it's X. Anytime we say output, it's Y. So if I look at this, these are my X's, these are my Y's. Is this a function? Yes or no? Let's see what you guys say. Just this one right here. Is this a function? Yes or no?
Entonces ahora miren a ver si esta es una función. Y Juan, pongámosle cuidado a esto porque aquí podemos entender lo que el maestro estaba diciendo.
Privately, I got an answer. America said yes, because there are no repeated X values. Do you guys agree? If I look here, does anything repeat? Nothing here repeats. So I will say, if nothing repeats, it is absolutely a function. 100%. If nothing repeats itself for the input, it is absolutely a function. So for this one, I can just set it here. We put that as a function. Let me move this one over here and you tell me. Look at this and tell me, is this one a function? This is our input. This is our output. So these are our X's. These are our Y's. Is this a function? Lydia says no. Does anybody else have a guess as well? I would love to see more people say this. America says no. Lydia and America, you are both correct. Our input repeats. All of these are threes, and they don't go to the same number. 3 goes to 1 and 2 and 3. If the X repeats and it goes with different things, this is not a function. Okay, let's try this one. Is this a function? Lydia says yes. America says no. Well, let's look at our input values. Do any of these repeat? If I look at this, does any input value repeat? The 4 does repeat. Now we have to see, are they tricking us? 4 goes with 7 here. 4 goes with 14. If 4 goes with 2 different things, remember, for a function, each input can only have one output. So 4 went to 2 different things. This is not a function. Okay, let me see this one here. Ha ha. Look at this one. Is this a function? Look at your X's, look at your Y's. Is this a function? Got 1 minute left, and that's okay. It is a function. They're tricking us. I've got the one that repeats, but it goes to the same number. This one is absolutely a function. What I want you to look at for these other ones, sometimes they'll put them on the sides like this, and that's okay. If I look at this one, I look at my X's, and we only have about a minute left, so I will show you sort of where they're going to go. But you guys have done a very, very good job today, and I wanted to make sure you understood that. With this one, if we look at our X's, -2 repeats, and it goes to 2 different things. -2 goes with 6, and -2 goes with 20. So that cannot be a function. For this one, none of our X's repeat, so this has to be a function. And then for this last one, if I look at the X's, since none of the X's repeat here, this also has to be a function. And it says here, we are on fire. We have correctly matched all of the cards. We did a good job. Guys, you have done a great job with this.